George, thank you so much for joining us on short notice. I think it's in everybody's best interest that we got together on this one because people are starting to become beyond concerned, but a lot of people are filled with anxiety right now over the economy. Can you go ahead and just kind of launch into a brief on what is going on from your perspective and some of the information you've gotten on the inside with the banking situation to begin with?
Well, a most critical thing has happened in the last 2 weeks is that the Bank of International Settlements wants to audit the Federal Reserve.
Oh, what are the implications of that?
Well, the Bank of International Settlements is running out of Switzerland, which is controlled by the 13 families, which is the Rothschild money trust, basically, which really controls the world. And our government, by our agreements before, when the Federal Reserve was brought into in its what we call its lifetime experience, which is authorized by our government, we didn't get the rights to audit it. Now, it's interesting that the Bank of International Settlements, which takes all currencies and exchange them, that's in Switzerland, is now requesting an audit, and Bush said it's okay to do it, but after he's out of his office. So they've got permission basically to do this at some time in the next couple of years.
Okay, so what has the fallout of that been?
Well, the fallout from inside the bankers is the problem is that the United States now is the poor kid on the block and nobody will loan anybody. Basically, we're the bankrupt of the world. And because the Bank of International Settlements and then can go into the banks themselves to see what's going on in the papers. It's the old story, figures don't lie, but liars figure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's exactly what's happening. Our country is based on the September 30th fiscal year. And theoretically, at the end of the year, we're supposed to, their fiscal year, we're supposed to know what the economic situation is of the United States. However, the Federal Reserve, this private bank, is advancing over $2 billion a day to keep the country afloat.
Right.
And that's to keep money in circulation. Well, meanwhile, foreign governments say, hey, we'll no longer buy your bonds. They're basically negligible, they're taking any of the money at all. They don't want them because these are debts of our people. Now, the Bank of International Settlements, of course, has taken the currencies of the dollar, which has gone out. And people forget that we only have 4.5% of the world's population consuming most of the world's goods right now on debt. Well, within the last month, I'll give you an idea of what has occurred. China has said to some of the people I know that are importing things from China, for instance, one associate buys about $500,000 a month worth of goods out of China. They were given notification that the Chinese guys will accept $100,000 in U.S. currency, but you're going to find some other currency to pay us.
Oh.
Now,
okay.
That's just to give you an idea. Now, that's occurring all the way across the board. Now, in the last 2 weeks, you want some current information. In the last 2 weeks was more interesting. Germany, you were just in Europe, I understand. Mm-hmm. If you know the euro is issued by each country that is a member of it. Mm-hmm. Germany announced that it will no longer accept euros from 8 of the other members.
It has to be what, in Deutschmarks?
Well, no, the Germans said if you want to pay us, you got to pay us in something else, but they won't accept them. They just, in other words, give you an idea, Italy and Spain are the two countries that they were concerned about, and they just said, we won't take your euro. So they have to go to some other currency, which again comes back to the Bank of International Settlements, which is supposed to be the world exchange rate to keep track of the money. This is the Forex, the foreign exchange.
Yes, yeah.
Well, since all money is merely a promise to pay to somebody, if you can give me a definition of money, they don't even have a definition of money in the World Bank's accounting books. Mm-hmm. It's just a commodity to keep track. Well, now we're occurring that our banks themselves in this country are no longer trust each other because I think before when we were on the air, I talked to you about the big bubble, which was the derivatives.
Right.
There's no way, nobody can tell you what a derivative's worth. Well, the derivatives have been funding the whole country. Now, 2 companies, major companies, in the last month now are no longer reporting sales. And that, believe it or not, it's Sears and Kmart, which got together because of the money provided because of the derivative market. Now, the banks are so scared because of what's happening in the real estate market, they aren't even loaning each other. Remember, they used to do that. If you had excess money, we'll loan to other. They won't do that because the real estate market is collapsing so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Now, collapsing because the lenders won't loan to people that may even want to buy them.
Mm-hmm.
So you probably heard today that the government's trying to organize something to advance money to the to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Which are the lenders that up till this point have been given some liquidity to the market. But the problem is every bank has gone back to the old days, back when I was building, 20 years ago. If you want to buy a house, you got to put 20% down.
Right.
And we want to show that you had the 20% in your bank somewhere for the last 90 days. And your job potential is going to be one of them. We can reasonably say that you're going to go ahead and continue to make payments. So what's happening, even though people have letters that saying, yeah, we got our, we're okay for credit on it, when you come down to the dotted line, it's not happening. So what's occurring everywhere except for in a few major cities like, Washington, D.C. and, the neighboring communities there that are government-sponsored, a lot of the big cities are just going into, if you look at it, a meltdown in the real estate end of it. And I'm predicting it'll go down 50%. I talked to one of my banker friends last week, and they said there probably will be escalating to 11 million foreclosures coming up this next 12 months.
Oh, boy.
Now the foreclosures affect all the banking situation. Now, today, supposedly we're supposed to get the accounting of Wells Fargo, and upcoming is Bank of America and a few other ones, because we had a couple of major banks come down. Now they said, no problem, FDIC will cover it. Well, FDIC is upside down right now.
Well, that was my question. Yes, talk about that for a minute, because President Bush went on the telly last night and told everyone not to worry. It's okay. Your money's protected by the FDIC, so you're backed up on here. Yeah, right. So could you talk about it?
Well, let's talk. FDIC is the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's a GSE. It's a government-sponsored enterprise, but its potential obligations right now, it has about 30 cents on the dollar for liabilities. And there is some talk right now within the group of a couple more majors, and I'm talking about Wells Fargo and Bank of America, maybe seeking the same thing. At this point, then, we'd basically socialize the entire country, put it under a national emergency, and goodbye all your rights and goodbye the United States.
So you're saying are you saying that right now Wells Fargo and Bank of America are that close to...
Well, I personally went over to Bank of America and wanted to take out $2,500 in cash and small bills. That's 20s, 10s, 5s. We took them all. And the whole, this is one of the branches, but I've talked to other people in the same way. The banks themselves have been given notification to some of the depositors, if you come get your money, they're not letting them take out any more cash. And this is in other banks across the United States. So what we're doing now is looking at a very, what I call liquidity crisis that's going to be occurring.
Yes,
and
yes.
The next thing is happening, we're talking about oil and stuff in the United States. We have not, as you know, built a refinery for roughly 20 years. It takes about 3.5 years to build a refinery for the fuel. Now, we got every drilling rig in the United States is at full slaughter right now trying to drill for oil and reserves. And when they're talking about, there's only 3 currencies in the world, so we understand right now. The currencies are oil, gold, and drugs. Mm-hmm. So obviously you and I aren't in the drugs business, but indirectly we're in the oil business because it's kind of running now. There was a treaty that was signed, and this is interesting. There was a treaty that was signed many years ago that said that all oil would be traded in dollars.
Right.
Within the last year, several countries are now off of that treaty. They say you pay us in euros mm-hmm. or some other currency.
Right.
In the last 2 weeks now, the Bank of South America, which is organizing about $8 billion, which is several countries down there are putting in, to create their own currency because they know that the dollar is going to collapse. And frankly, it could happen as early in the next 90 days, so your listeners should be concerned about what's going on.
Okay, let me just pick up on a couple of things. There's just you created so many strands there. You said you expect the housing market to go down 50%. Is that 50% from today?
From today.
Whoa. Okay. All right.
Well, we're already off 20. Well, let's get some realistic things. People have speculative capital. In other words, money they want to go gamble, so they go into the stock market. That's all it is. This is a gambling casino. You would probably agree with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if the stock market is the discretionary capital, they've always thought that your real estate was your home and you're going to protect it. But look, just in the last few months, to give you an idea, as of July 1st, that's about the closest I can think. The Japanese market was down 12%. Australian market was down 18%. The German market was down 22%. India's market went down 36%, and China's Shanghai Exchange has gone down 50%. This is, a massive deflation. What it amounts to is people are trying to get liquid, and they want to try to sell their stocks. Now, what's happening in the stock market is the stock market is coming down. You probably noticed in how the Dow went, we were up around 13,000, and I'm predicting it'll be back down to around 7,500 to 8,000 probably in the next year.
And yet still, people listened to Bush last night. They see that the price of crude fell a bit, and so today the market's up a tad, or last I saw the market was up a tad. So still, people are being lulled into this horrid sense of false security.
Yeah, but your listeners aren't that stupid. They know what's coming. They're not. They know that what's coming out of the mouth up there is only what's told, and that's trying to tame and keep everybody asleep while the market comes.
Exactly. It's frightening because so not everybody's listening to you right now, but all we can do is what we can do for whoever's tuned in at the moment. So let's look at how we start going about contending with it from today. Now, you told us what to do a year and a half ago, and there was plenty of time to maneuver, and many of us did maneuver at that time. You told us another 6 months ago what to do and how to maneuver. Many people took advantage of that little window. But now the window is looking minuscule in terms of being able to maneuver at all, as you say, if they're not allowing people to even take cash out of the bank in some situations.
Well, I would suggest if anybody has 5,000 or more in what I call dollars to diversify, Everbank, Everbank in Florida is allowing people to go into a special account. It's a basket of foreign currencies.
So that's still holding up pretty well?
Well, until they shut the banks down completely, because basically you have some money off. If you want to look at it, you have money that's invested in 4 countries, whatever ones you want to. In other words, you want to put it in the Canadian dollar. You think they're stronger than we are, or you can put it into, the German mark, or anything that's going on. This is going to have to be a determination of each one of the listeners to do some research, because it's like myself. I've got some people right now with a lot of money, and they're scared to death. And I said, well, why shouldn't you be scared? You got China with $1.2 trillion, and they're doing what they can to move to any place in the world that will accept dollars, and they're buying all the natural resources.
Yeah.
And so the same thing comes to here. Now we have a real amazing problem that's happened in the last 6 months. As I probably shared with you, the big cargo ships that are coming in.
Yes.
Their fuel charges, were $22,000 a day, and they're up to $100,000 a day.
So last time we talked to you, I think it was around 90,000. So it's continuing to rise.
It's continuing to rise, and then the Patriot Act has made it so that they're having to keep these ships offshore as the inspectors come in, supposedly, to inspect everything. So now they're running 3, 4, 5 days offshore before even the stuff comes in. Well,
and then that's, of course, contributing to the cost of goods, and they just released the stats from last month. It's, a 1.2 or 3% rise in inflation in 1 month, which at that rate, if we continued, we'd be looking at about 13% for the year, although I understand that for 2008 thus far we're technically only at 5%, but what do you actually expect to see by the end of this year in terms of inflation in the United States?
Well, to me, real inflation is when you go over to the grocery store and you buy yourself an apple.
Absolutely.
Or you go get yourself some gasoline.
Right.
Because these areas are not included in the inflation figures.
Yeah.
And right now, 80% of the cost of an apple is due to energy in some form, whether it's transportation or whether it's the product making the food or whatever we have. And so I'm looking at, if you're looking at a real inflation rate, probably 35 to 40%.
35 to 40%. I'm just taking notes here. 35
I'm
to
just
40% by the end of this year in real terms, in terms of what
in
it's
real
costing
terms.
us to live.
Hey, you're buying gasoline at. I told you before what the gasoline was going to be. I know it's going to be $5 a gallon everywhere across the board.
Right.
Because we have to import it all, and the foreign people say, hey, we don't want to take the dollar anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So now the only result of that whole situation, which is another scary thing, is Israel and the United States are working out the details right now to attack Iran to begin World War III.
Yeah. It would appear so, yes.
Well, it's coming from every direction.
Yep.
You've got meetings coming in from, and that you can just put the pieces together and look at it. Now, that's, again, a diversion for the people, because we don't have the ability now to continue the country. And all the other countries, I'm talking about the financing and control and the ownership of what you have. It's like he calls a national emergency. What system or what law do we have that say you even own a house?
Yes, that's true.
In other words, our legal system is all shot to pieces. We talk about all the things. Look at Congress. As Congress this last session, they didn't pass any bills that made any substantial difference to this whole country. None. Zippo. And name one war we've been involved in, which we won.
Mm-hmm.
Any war.
Right.
We've all been in either. They've changed the names. Like right now, we're not at war with Iraq. Never have been. War with some kind of supposedly enemy out here, the terrorist.
Right. Right.
So we have, it's a manipulation game on the listeners and the people to understand what's going on. And I'm still urging people to get themselves some, old junk silver, if they can do that.
That was my next question. Good.
Gold, still get that. And it's getting harder to get right now. For instance, the American Eagles, and they've admitted that they haven't put enough of them out. It takes me about 3 or 4 weeks to get some silver for people.
Yes.
It's really interesting.
Is it true? Is that true of junk silver as well, or only the stuff off the mint?
No, junk silver too.
So there's a little lag.
That's right. There's a run on gold. There's a run on things. Even Monex and the two big ones up there saying if you're going to order it, you're going to have to, wait a little bit for us to get it. And then they're telling people to go into the market to buy the supposedly security that is buying the stuff. But they're in options too, and I don't trust any of it. I'm telling everybody, get possession, physical, and you can sit there and feel very comfortable going to bed and say, hey, it's under my mattress. I don't care. Maybe at some point we'll be able to trade with somebody else to buy some kind of commodity, because somebody's always going to have things. I urge everybody to start getting stored up on foods. Look at what they've done with the canned foods even. They've even dropped 20% of the size of the cans again. Now, they did this a few years ago. Now they're doing the same thing.
Very true. Well, now, if these are the basics that we all need to cover, is just get ourselves in a position to have something we can do commerce with, junk silver, a little cash, and so forth. And then what about people who are in positions where they have, they're in, say, the over $100,000 range? What would they do? I mean, I've heard some people say, well, it's time to start opening up accounts in various banks and dispersing this so that it's not all coming down if one bank goes down or if two go down. What would you say to that?
Well, I don't have a problem with the people trying to preserve their asset if they're looking at it, but by putting $100,000 in any bank, even though it's supposedly FDIC insured, I mean, they're making, Bush telling you it's not a problem, we got everything covered, and yet when Indy Bank went under, and they keep changing the figures, you don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars are gone because people have them in corporate accounts or something else. But a liquidity factor, it's better not even to have it in the dollar right now. That's the reason why I'm suggesting like EverBank or some foreign banks will no longer take Americans' deposits in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. So that's the challenge of it. In other words, I recommended some time ago to put it in a Canadian bank. Well, they won't take the deposits.
Does this include the Bank of Nova Scotia, which you had talked about?
That's right.
They won't take American deposits?
Nope.
Oh, boy. Well, that's one avenue that's been shut off. I was going to ask you about that.
Well, Swiss Bank in Switzerland now, you have to check that around. And then if you do get it into Switzerland, they're also auditing or checking out all transfers of money outside of the country, in even as little as $5,000.
Yes.
Just to give you an idea, if you wired $5,000 to some other country, you probably have to fill out a form why it's going there. If you put money into a foreign bank, because of the Patriot Act, the foreign bank that accepts the dollars has to report they have that deposit by an American in any capacity. You can be a stockholder, you can be an officer, or you can, just indirectly in the bank account. That bank has to be reported back to the United States. And if you try to get money back into the United States, they're coming back with two premises. This is what they're doing to a couple of my friends. Let's say you had money in Switzerland and you wanted, that's $50,000. Well, they want to know where you got the money. Mm-hmm. If you can't prove that it was yours, you're either considered a terrorist or you're a drug dealer, and they're confiscating it in foreign countries.
Jeez. Okay.
So it's coming down pretty quick. I urge, like I say, I did the same thing. Went to Bank of America the other day, and we just pulled out $2,500 in small bills. That's
mm-hmm.
1, 5, 10s, and 20s. Nothing bigger than that. Because
mm-hmm.
if you take 50s and 100s and go overseas, they won't even accept them in places.
Mm-hmm.
It's calming down that way.
Right.
So you should have some trading thing, and we also said get a hold of some junk silver. It may take you a little bit to get them. Just check around on the, coin dealers around your town if you can possibly do it. And if you get in trouble, call me. I'll let you know how long it takes to get them. But that's basically where I'm at right now.
And food, and going ahead and getting some staples on hand because the price is only going to continue to go up. I shall assume that.
Well,
yes.
assume greatly because I've talked to I talked to a couple of the producers of some fruits, and they said, well, we're not even picking this stuff because it costs us more to get the material than it does after we get to getting it out there. And because they're trying to set up price controls in all these different places, price controls are the next step in order to try to keep inflation. Now, I got word today that because inflation was a lot higher than what they predicted on the thing, that they may turn around and raise the interest rates on the Federal Reserve, which that's another avenue of just collapsing the dollar from the world standpoint.
Right.
Now, the dilemma is from the Federal Reserve, we have to put money out or borrow money or whatever to keep the country going. But if foreign governments want to come here and loan us money at 2% and inflation is 20%, how much do they lose?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's happening. And see, that's what's happening with foreign countries that are making products. Now, Europe, if you notice, the euro is about twice ours right now, so they think we're a bargain basement right now. We're the poor boys of the world. They can come over here and buy the products that we make because it's costing them more than that. Well, here's the problem. It's a world meltdown. It isn't just the United States.
I wanted to know about that. What is in store for the euro from what you can see?
I'm looking for the euro to collapse at some time. That's the reason why I'm looking at what Germany's doing very carefully because they're really holding the game together. And Russia is negotiating right now with Germany and to create something else that's going on. The borscht was supposed to start. That's a new currency to keep track of the oil, and Iran set that up. And then conveniently, there was 3. Remember the cables that were cut underground? Yeah. Those cables were cut specifically because they had the borscht ready to go. In other words, oil trading would be in a new currency. And then this last week, of course, the Bank of South America opened. Now, if there was a way you could convert your dollars to the new currency they got going, that'll be a good idea. And South America, frankly, will be one of the safest areas on the planet because, again, it's one of the largest producers in the world. And people like Brazil doesn't have any real debt, but they have a big disparity between the rich and the poor.
Right.
But they do have commodities that come out. Then you have other countries, if you look at, Argentina and Chile and the rest of them, they have commodities that are coming out too, and they're looking to export what they have. But most of the stuff's going to Europe now because Europe will pay them in real money.
Right.
They don't want our dollars.
So go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Well, no, and Bush is making a big deal about the exchange deal with Colombia. That is a can of worms because Colombia still has a lot to do with the drugs that keep running around the world. So I don't want to, belittle the situation because I haven't been to Cartagena or the different places in Colombia for a couple of years. I just come back from Ecuador, and Ecuador is getting itself squared away so it can be basically self-sufficient, and that's what you have to have. I mean, in Ecuador, 95% of all the world's plants that grow throughout the world are grown somewhere in Ecuador.
Interesting.
So they have food, and also their cost of living is a lot cheaper. Like against, for instance, Costa Rica, it's cheaper to be in Ecuador. Mexico now they've got so many druggies and so many gangs running down there. There's certain areas that are safe, but you're in a compound. All you're doing is setting up your own police force.
Right. And it has been interesting watching South America over the last decade. I mean, some of the countries have had some terrible financial crises, yet they've managed to pull it together and dig themselves out, and they're still very rich in resources. And it seems like we should have been paying more attention along the way to how they were managing to solve some of those problems. What about the Amero now? What are you looking at there?
Well, all I can do is to take the word of the Prime Minister of Canada 3 weeks ago, and he said there's no way they're going to go to the euro. Why would we support a bankrupt country? And Mexico involved with this thing is so corrupt. I mean, frankly, it's unbelievable. I mean, if you've been to Mexico City with 26 million people, half of the people in Mexico City don't have running water or electricity.
So the Amero is off the table for now, right?
I think it's off the table. I don't see it ever coming together. I mean, people tell me, "Oh yeah, they've agreed." Well, Prime Minister Canada said, "No, we're not going to do it." Mexico, basically, they started it. It sounded like a good deal, but who are you dealing with?
Mm-hmm.
What is our government? What's the purpose? Try to create a new euro?
Right.
With a current, and we're the bankrupt nation.
No, exactly. I mean, but it's being bandied about. People are saying, "Oh no, this is all by design because they want to, push forward with the Amero." That's why I wanted your opinion on it.
No, the real design right now, unfortunately, comes back to watch Kissinger and crew, and they just having their meetings again. How do you get World War III going? And this is all part of the population reduction thing, which is, scary to me as well as anybody else.
Right.
And I know that's part of the program is to reduce the world's population. So they got to get the war started. Why do you think all this Afghan stuff is going and all the rest of the things they're talking about? I mean, you're obviously at war with all the Iraqis, and I mean, I've got communication with a lot of people. They don't want us there at all.
Right.
We're just an occupied. We're occupying their place, and the so-called government over there was directed by us to have it, but the people don't want it. They want to have their own way to go. They want us out of there.
Yes, indeed, and we've done a couple of interviews with Loren Murray talking about that whole issue in terms of that's the best way to start getting depleted uranium, pumped out in large quantities to the population at large throughout the world. I mean, this is another consideration, totally on one level separate, but as you're saying, if this all is marching toward one goal, which is to cull out the herd here on planet Earth by being able to justify wars and so forth and everything that comes with that, then it sounds like that makes more sense than just about anything else, I guess, doesn't it?
No, well, the play is, let's say, the whole thing is all a big play controlled by a few people. And like I say, the interesting part was when the Rothschilds demanded an audit of our banking system.
I was going to get back to that. I don't quite get that because I thought that the Rothschilds and those very same families are the backbone of the Federal Reserve.
Well, let's put it this way. If you and I were partners and we were doing business for a while and we found out that our partners were not treating us fairly, and we were supporting them indirectly, wouldn't we examine our partnership a little bit better?
Yeah, sure.
The payoffs are then, hey, we're controlling the world, yeah, but wait a minute, you're not doing what you were supposed to be doing. I mean, all you have to do is read the Rothschild Money Trust, and you can understand the whole game from their standpoint. Meanwhile, they come over here and the Rockefeller, look, David's, 95? And so if you got all these banks coming apart when Chemical and Chase merged, and Chase is controlled by the Rockefellers, David himself, David Rockefeller, between his trust and all his other organizations, controls 4.5% of 90% of the world's corporations. Now, 60% of all stock in the world is controlled by trust and mutual funds, which have no voting rights. So you put a lot of power in the hands of somebody, and whatever it is, the marching instructions say, hey, you go ahead and take care of this, but what they've done is bankrupted our country.
Are there go ahead. Yeah.
So then you go to the next step. If the Bank of International Settlement says we want to audit on it, if we're going to still take, quote, they're in a position, do they want to exchange the dollar?
Right.
Remember, that's where the thing comes back. It's an unbelievable mess we're in.
Yeah, it is. Are there, in terms of banks, banks, are there any banks that you feel have managed their loan load better than others and are not in quite the position of, say, Wells Fargo, Indy Bank, and Bank of America?
No, my suggestion is to go to a small local bank, look at their financial statements, and actually credit unions are better.
Okay, credit unions. That's good. That's good to know. credit union?
Go down to your local credit union. The credit union's only loans to its own members, and it's usually fairly well managed by what's going on.
Oh, very good.
And a lot of credit unions they're also insured.
Okay, very good. Well, that's a useful piece of information for people looking to do something. What is the window, from what you see right now, we've heard that September is going to be a time where we should see a very abrupt change in the financial climate beyond what's happening right now. What's your take on the timelines here?
Well, I told you September 30th is our fiscal year.
Okay, so September 30th. All right.
It's the fiscal year of our country.
All right.
So if it comes up to that date, and I'm looking at my other sources are saying they're trying to get the war started between now and then, and that's less than 90 days, isn't it?
Yeah. So whatever.
If they get the war started, then basically they could suspend everything. Now, then the question, this is what foreign countries are looking at. The question then is, we have our troops. Will they come out and round up our own people? And that's a potential. That's what they're looking at, because what we're doing is going to be just a big police state.
But I thought that they had already begun importing troops from other countries for that purpose of rounding U.S. citizens up.
They do have that. They do have that. But remember, here's our problem. We have 300 million people in the United States.
Yeah.
Half of them are over age 50. And we also have another problem. We got a lot of them that are, as you know, our baby generation, if you're looking at it. Most of the kids today don't read or write. So we really got a stumbling block of education, and because of the programming of basically the entertainment field. Sports and entertainment keeps everybody going as they take over the world. And now we have, since over 50, and the break point, if you look at the Plan 2000 agenda, was over age 44. If you had a use that they could use, then they will keep you alive, frankly. And as you know, they're sending up all these prisoner of war camps all over the United States.
Yes.
And these are things that people should at least be aware of, that this is marching towards basically our self-imprisonment of creating a prison.
And this is we're getting closer to this becoming a reality, then, you're saying?
I'm making arrangements so I can, if I get some word from what I call higher-ups, I'll be making that journey to get out of harm's way for a while. I think people have to be educated from more than one area. You have to look at it from the political standpoint, economic, and the spiritual need. This is a big cleansing of the planet right now.
Yes, indeed.
We're all coming to that end cycle, if you want, the ending, beginning of a new cycle, and what's going to be left. And it's not very positive at this point.
And again, true values. And I know that the last couple times we talked, it does come down to really being able to identify true values, being there for each other, being able to start having respect for and going back and working with the land again, and all of these very simple concepts that we let go of a long time ago.
That's right. Getting back into small communities, and then making a big difference on two things: needs and wants.
Yes.
What you're going to look at is what you need to survive. You may desire all these things. That's part of the, the advertising or promotion. We want you to desire everything, but you really need it.
Right.
Well, right now, you want to do a real inventory on what you need to go on, and now's the time to downsize.
Okay, well, on that note, again, thank you so much. I know you've been on the phone all day with some of these various entities you were talking about. So when things start looking like they're going to take another shift again, would you let us know, George?
I'll stay in touch and let you. Well, it's escalating right now, and it's almost like a daily basis. I should actually be having somebody, post it on my website, but I don't have enough time, frankly.
Well, I understand. Yeah, we'll do it on ours. So keep us informed. Anything major that's coming down the pike, we will be happy to put it up. And in addition, when we're starting to look at something that could be more nefarious, such as starting to actually open the gates to those camps that have been built for some purpose, maybe let us know when that's coming down the pike from your inside sources.
As long as we can do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, George.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Bye.